let's pick up on Oswald. And you commented in our earlier conversation that he had visited the Soviet embassy, the Cuban embassy in Mexico. I can almost guarantee you that, yes, he was under surveillance by the agency. From a counterintelligence perspective, that's exactly what would happen. I don't know to what degree they were sharing information with the FBI, but I do know from my time that sometimes that information sharing was seriously lacking, and it certainly would have been worse back in the 60s and 70s when they didn't play well together. From your perspective, what are the chances? I mean, we always talk about, or people who look at this a lot, they talk about the mob involvement in it, this agency involvement in it. What's the possibility that the Soviets and the Cubans, because look, Oswald was desperate to show his value to the revolution, right? I mean, he had an unsatisfactory living experience in St. Petersburg, but he was still keen to prove his worth, basically, to the communist leaders. What's the chances that they saw that, and while they may have thought, as you pointed out, that he was somewhat unhinged, perhaps they saw him as someone they could turn, and they did, and used him to carry out the assassination. Do you think there's any merit in that?
I think there could be, Mike, on the Cuban end. On the Soviet end, the reason I say no is, I was the first journalist to interview Yuri Nosenko, the defector who James Jesus Angleton thought was a fake defector, gave me long interviews. I talked to Necheparenko, the Kostakov, the other KGB agents who ended up in Mexico City. Let me tell you, they had watched him when he had defected Oswald. He tried to kill himself when they told him to leave Russia. They didn't want him there. Then they moved him out to Minsk. They kept all types of surveillance on him. They knew he was unstable. And so if they wanted to do an operation that would involve taking a possible hit at the president of the United States, they couldn't trust somebody like him, because if it unraveled, that was World War III. The Cubans, on the other hand, were willing to play a little bit more aggressive. And although they may not have said to him, go and try to find a job so you can kill the president, they may have given him some encouragement. And that's why I believe everybody is looking at the U.S. files in the National Archives. I'm wondering why we don't call on, well, we have no relations with them. That's why we don't do it. But the Cubans could have information on this, but the others are the Mexicans. We do have a friendly relationship with the Mexican government. Mexican intelligence was watching these embassies as well as monitoring the U.S. to see what we were doing. They wanted to make sure that although it was a nest of spies, everybody played by some rules, so it wasn't playing out in violence on their soil. So Mexican intelligence files have never been released from this period. They may well have had more intelligence on Oswald during his social time, when he was outside of the Soviet and Cuban embassies, going to these parties where he was with other people, than we actually picked up in terms of the American intelligence. So I'd love to see what the Mexicans have.
Yeah, I think that's an intriguing point. I would be somewhat skeptical that they would have much to add. I don't know why I say that, other than I just think given that time period, I don't know that they had the capabilities from a intel service. But I think it's definitely worth pursuing, like everything else, right? I mean, everything's speculation until we see everything that's out there, which is one of the reasons I'm hoping this is a full release of the remaining material for JFK.